not normally get to 90 degrees. And everybody said that to me over and over again. And it's very much a part of the conversation, right? This extreme weather that we're dealing with, the heat waves, the storms, the hurricanes, the tornadoes, and it's affecting Amazon's bottom line. And they're going to have to kind of readjust some of their goals for that, but also readjust their business model. Released in 2023 during Amazon's financial filing, they talked about how extreme weather, the climate crisis, quote unquote, could actually affect their bottom line for one of the biggest reasons being operational costs. It costs a heck of a lot more money to do what they are doing, get those packages to where they are going, the thing they're known for most, during some of these extreme climate crises. I asked Kara about how they kind of adjust their business model, how they keep doing their job. She kept saying to me, the customer is the most important thing, right? How do you adjust during this climate crisis? Because they also help with disaster relief. And she talked about making sure that distribution centers are in the places that they need to be, making sure their workers are living in the places they need to live. Knowledge that this climate crisis could very well affect their bottom line and the goals that they have set to be zero carbon by 2040. Hal.
Yasmin Vasugian, great reporting. Thank you very much for bringing it to us. Quick reminder, we're going to have full coverage from the Republican National Convention starting next Monday in Milwaukee. That's right. I'll see you there starting at 5 o'clock as you're watching right now here on NBC News Now. See you then. We'll be back with more coverage from here in Washington right now. We're coming on the air tonight with the meltdown in one of the country's biggest cities. Triple-digit temperatures, millions without power, without fridges that work, waiting in long lines for gas or generators. We're live in Houston with the struggle to get some relief from this dangerous heat that has now turned deadly. And a temperature check of a different kind here in Washington. Anxiety, his insistence on staying in the race. He's meeting with the key world leader right now, even as more lawmakers call on him to step aside. Plus, what we're just learning about new subpoenas to some of his top aides about his age and fitness for office. Plus, opening statements today in the trial of Alec Baldwin. Why his lawyer says it really doesn't matter whether he pulled trigger or not. We're live in Santa Fe. Plus, how the cops caught a man suspected of killing 3 people with a crossbow, just taken into custody in the UK. And the new warnings about those popular nicotine pouches that are probably all over your For You page, the social media Zin effect, in tonight's original. Hey, I'm Hallie, and tonight a dangerous heat wave is making life more miserable for millions of people who do not have power in Houston. The city's still reeling after a hurricane slammed it on Monday. Houstonians are now facing a heat index of up to 105 degrees. That means no air conditioning. And look at this. These are long lines for people waiting at the restaurants and at the gas stations that do still fed. They're looking to get fueled up as the city's electrical utility works to get power restored for the most vulnerable places like nursing homes and hospitals. 16 of them right now are relying on emergency backup generators for power. The city's football stadium is set to house potentially hundreds of hospital patients who are ready to be discharged, but who can't go home because of the outages. And look, the stadium's got holes in its roof because of the storm that blew through. That's the situation that Houston is finding itself in right now. This blackout, of course, a concerning start to what is expected to be a very hot summer, adding to the scrutiny on Texas's power grid operator, which already warned it might need planned rolling blackouts next month. Top Texas officials today saying, hey, they'll get to that eventually, but for now, the focus is on keeping people alive.
We can talk about how to use our state's massive surplus to start burying some of these power lines in the ground instead of doing this every 3 months, right? We can do that, but for right now, don't play games, don't take the risk, just survive.
That, of course, is our top story tonight. But we want to turn to one of our other top stories, too, and that is what's happening with President Biden, as we're just now hearing from him as we speak at this NATO summit. Want to go to play that, and Monica Alba here as we're waiting for that tape playback to begin. I think we have Mon, who's live for us outside the White House. Mon, at any minute, we may interrupt you to roll that tape, but obviously another key moment for the president here. A lot of eyeballs on him. Talk us through it.
Yeah, Hallie, and what we're talking about here is that the president, after having been involved in those NATO meetings earlier in the day, now he is hosting the new British Prime Minister who is at the White House, and they were just in the Oval Office, and they're now going to have a more extended bilateral conversation and meeting. But in terms of what he said at the...
Let's listen in for 1 second, Monica, as I think we see it and hear it.
The news is right. I tell you what, it's all because of the Prime Minister.
Not lost a game under the Labour government in 2024. It looks like it.
Well, welcome. And it's good that we had a long conversation on the phone when you won. Give me your hand there, pal. And we're the best of allies maybe in the whole world. And we really need to continue to cooperate. And a lot we can talk about. And I think that start off, we can talk about, we call football, we call soccer. By the way, soccer has become incredibly popular here in the United States. It really is growing. And but at any rate, and there's a lot going on. I think you're seeking closer ties in Europe is good for all of us. The Transatlantic Alliance, I think it's a great idea that we're going to be working together on. I thought we had a good meeting today, NATO.
Very good.
I thought we had a good meeting, and I think things are moving in the right direction. I'm feeling really optimistic about the way things are moving. But welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And firstly, congratulations on a really successful summit. It's been an incredibly important moment, 75 years, a bigger NATO, a stronger NATO, and a NATO with the resolve that we need. I thought the medal, the honour for Jens Stoltenberg yesterday was a very special moment. I don't think he was expecting it.
No, he wasn't.
And
I owe him big. He was leaving, and I intervened when he was going to leave, and I sort of got on my knees and begged him to say, no, I'm only kidding, but his wife still talked to me. She spoke to me yesterday.
I had lunch with him when he was just about to go to the central bank and was saying, I'm free. And then you spoke to him, and he's still in the job.
No, he's done a great job.
But the special relationship is so important. It's forged in difficult circumstances, endured for so long, and stronger now than ever. So we're very pleased to be able to come so early in the government to recommit to NATO, to recommit to the special relationship, and to have the opportunity to discuss these affairs with you is really important for us.
In a figurative sense,
5 days in.
I kind of see you guys as the knot tying the Transatlantic Alliance together. The closer you are with Europe, the more you're engaged, the more, because we know where you are. We know we are in both countries.
No, I think that's absolutely right. And now we go into a cup final on Sunday on top of all of that. So, very good. I actually I began to watch the game with the Netherlands Prime Minister, but we left at 1-1.
Well, you guys are still talking to one another?
We haven't seen each other since, so we'll have to see.
Well, we got a lot to talk about. So thank you all for coming in.
Yes, the cacophony at the end of any kind of Oval Office spray from the reporters assembled in the room. Team coverage, of course, on this with Monica Alva, who is joining us, Julie Serkins with us, and Mon. Listen, that's an interesting moment, right? Because that was one of the first times, I think the first time that we've seen President Biden in the Oval Office with another world leader talk about an unscripted moment. He could have taken any one of the questions that reporters were trying to get to him there. He obviously, it sounds to my ear like he chose not to. But these are the kinds of moments that are going to be so heavily scrutinized between now and that news conference tomorrow. And then, of course, the interview that he has with Lester Holt coming up on Monday.
Absolutely, Hallie. And to pull back the curtain a bit, as I know you love to do on your show, it was our colleague Gabe Gutierrez, who was actually the pooler, who was there, who was trying to get a question to the president specifically on some news that we've seen today, including the op-ed that was written by actor George Clooney calling on him to step aside and not be in the race anymore. But as you saw there, yes, the president didn't engage on that, specifically trying to keep the focus on this relationship with the new prime minister, trying to talk about soccer. As you saw there was a big game today between England and the Netherlands. And so the two leaders talking about that, trying to really make this about simple chatter between two world leaders and not to weigh in on exactly the major, cascade of Democrats who are really talking about President Biden's future here and raising a lot of really serious questions. So you're right. They're going to wait to do that tomorrow during his press conference, which I am told he is preparing for. He is, of course, aware of the many questions he may receive about his path forward, about his health, and they are having some discussions about that. And they know that tomorrow they will be facing some of those hard questions from the assembled reporters as this NATO summit wraps up, Hallie.
Of course, you make the good point, Monica, that while the discussion inside the Oval Office may be about soccer games and NATO, as this summit is all about, the discussion, I think, for most folks on Capitol Hill right now, at least on the Democratic side, is about President Biden and what happens next from here. You now have, I believe, 10 lawmakers who are either publicly or privately putting their names behind calls for President Biden to step off the ticket. You have, as you mentioned, George Clooney, and this interesting maybe pushback, is that the right word, from the White House against that, given President Biden has made clear he wants to be in this race. He's in it to win it. Even as the former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is suggesting she would like to see the president make a decision. He's already made that decision, it sounds like.
Yeah. And it was a combination of those two things today, Hallie. I think what you saw Speaker Emerita Pelosi say on Morning Joe on MSNBC this morning, and then George Clooney's op-ed, and the campaign is actually responding to both identically, saying Joe Biden was already clear earlier this week. He is committed to staying in this race, and he's not going anywhere. That's how they both chose to really reply to both of those comments. What I think is more interesting about specifically Nancy Pelosi's own words there is that she's maybe giving cover to some other Democrats who want to be saying something similar, but from her position of power, it's really notable. And then on the George Clooney side of things, I was just told by somebody who was familiar with the event planning that went into this fundraiser in Los Angeles, they're trying to now make the argument that George Clooney was only there for a brief period of time while the president stayed for about 3 hours. So they're trying to argue here that George Clooney doesn't have the full picture or impression of what the president was like on that particular night. Hallie.
Monica, Alba, thank you much. We'll talk more about the Clooney of it all later in the show. But Julie, let me go to you here because I know that we're getting some new reporting that Senator John Fetterman, who has been one of the vocal backers on the Senate side of President Biden, calling the comments from Nancy Pelosi that we just referenced strange. Objectively speaking, Julie, they are extraordinary, and that the speaker is saying that it's up to the president to make a decision when he has very clearly and very publicly already come out with what his decision is. There's a lot to read into on that front.
100%, Hallie. This is somebody who may not be the current speaker or the Democratic leader, but certainly many people here in this Democratic caucus in the House listen to her. She's been a fixture of this place. But notably, a lot of Democrats that I spoke to, even in the last couple of minutes as I was walking outside, sort of trying to chase some lawmakers down after votes here, they use that line. They say, if Biden stays in, whether he stays in, if he makes that decision, I point out, he is in. He's saying he's going to run. He's not going anywhere. They counter, well, we'll see. I mean, this is just a line that we just continuously hear. So while Fetterman is saying that Pelosi's comments might be strange, you're right to say they are extraordinary. They are certainly not a silo. There are many that feel the same way she does. Take a listen to what senators had to say in reaction to Pelosi's comments this morning, but also just generally about where they feel like Biden.
I think that there will be a consensus at some point. I can't tell you when, but hopefully it will be as soon as possible.
Will you still support him if the president remains as the nominee?
I said enough. Speaker Pelosi nailed it pretty well this morning.
So she suggested that you could get out of it.
Like I said, don't have anything to add.
Nothing to add. You heard Monica say there, previewing that senior advisors to the Biden campaign are going to be here tomorrow outside of this building talking to Senate Democrats, showing them polling. They want to see the numbers, they want to see the facts, and they want to see the data before any more of them come out and make a decision as to whether they call on Biden to get out of the race or stay in. But I have to tell you, a lot of unanswered questions here. A lot of people still want to hear from Biden himself.
Julie Sirkin live for us on the Hill. Thank you so much. That programming note, of course, Monday. A lot of eyes will be on that sit down between our own Lester Holt and President Joe Biden. You can watch a preview here on NBC News Now with the full interview airing in prime time on the network, 9 o'clock Eastern. We will see you then. I want to go back now to our other top story, of course, that extreme weather happening right now in Houston. Kathy Park has been patiently standing by. Kathy, thank you so much, because obviously two big headlines tonight, and you're in the thick of one of them there, with damage from that storm that blew through earlier this week. But now, perhaps more crucially, the fallout from it. No power. It's super hot. No AC. Food spoiling. What are people doing? What are they telling you?
So, Hallie, people are getting pretty impatient. Keep in mind, this is now day 3 without power for hundreds of thousands of customers. And yeah, we just checked the temperature. We're climbing into the 90s once again. When you factor in heat and humidity, it's 105. There is a heat advisory in effect until later on this evening. So this heat is quite dangerous. In fact, we spoke with some residents who say that inside their homes, especially without electricity, it feels like a sauna. One gentleman said that it feels like 100 degrees just inside his house. And that's why these cooling centers across Houston have been such a hot spot, really. We saw long lines at one of them earlier today. They were actually passing out food and water and supplies. They ran out earlier this afternoon. And we also saw long lines at gas stations. Folks are fueling up not just their vehicles, but also tanks to bring back to fuel up their generators. And ice is also a precious commodity as well. In fact, we spoke with one woman waiting in line earlier today. Take a listen. What's going on right now? What's it like inside your house?
It's really hard to sleep at night. It's so hot. I've had to shower twice in order to stay cool. I've been trying to make sure I'm drinking cold water, Gatorade, staying, hydrated, and just trying to keep myself busy and not think about it. I'm hoping the power will come back on today, but just waiting to see what's going to happen next.
Yeah. And Hallie, if you listen closely, we are surrounded by a chorus of generators. These generators have been working overtime ever since Monday after Beryl roared through this area. And officials are using this moment to remind residents to be cautious and safe when using these generators. Remember to keep them outside, because obviously carbon monoxide poisoning is certainly a threat with those generators.
And Kathy, timeline for any kind of improvement in the power situation. When do they think they're going to be able to get the lights back on and, importantly, the AC back on for people?
Yeah, so that's a great question. CenterPoint Energy, which is a main utility here in Houston, right now there isn't an official timeline talking about the full restoration. They released a statement just a few hours ago saying that roughly 900,000 customers have their power back on, but it's still unclear, if it could take days, perhaps weeks. When you look around, there is debris just about everywhere. And those are some of the challenges that they're up against. But we're told that CenterPoint has brought on thousands of workers, and they're working around the clock. They're actually pulling resources from across the country as well. But CenterPoint Energy, they've also been getting a lot of backlash because this is day 3, and officials are saying that they will hold them accountable if needed and make sure that they did everything they could to prepare ahead of the storm.
Kathy Park, live for us in Houston. Kathy, thank you very much for that live report. Appreciate it. Let's take you out west, because right now you've got witnesses taking the stand in the trial of Alec Baldwin. After lawyers for both sides made their opening statements, the defense saying the superstar never pulled the trigger on the prop gun on a movie set that killed the cinematographer, that gun misfired, and that even if Baldwin did pull the trigger, this still would not be his fault. Listen.
Even if he intentionally pulled the trigger like the prosecutor just demonstrated, that doesn't make him guilty of homicide. He did not know or have any reason to know that gun was loaded with a live bullet.
Remember, this trial is beginning nearly 3 years after that gun, held by Baldwin, went off on the movie set of Rust, killing Helena Hutchins, hurting the director. Baldwin's attorneys are not the only ones pointing the finger at somebody other than the actor. Listen to the 911 call played for the jury today in court.
Had 2 people accidentally shot on a movie set by a prop gun. We need help immediately. Okay? This AG that yelled at me at lunch because asking about revisions. His mother, did you see him yell at my disgusted gun? He's responsible for what happened.
Now, Baldwin has pleaded not guilty in this involuntary manslaughter trial, but he faces 1.5 years in prison if convicted. That is the sentence that the armorer on the set, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, got in her trial earlier this year. NBC's Chloe Melas is outside the courthouse in Santa Fe, New Mexico. What was so interesting today, Chloe, is we really got that roadmap for how the prosecution plans to press the case against Baldwin and how Baldwin's team is trying to defend him. Talk us through it. I mean, Hallie, the prosecution really laying out that they believe that Alec Baldwin completely disregarded firearm safety on set, that he didn't have the proper training, and that he came on there and he was pointing the gun at people and he had his finger on the trigger, and that they claim that they have video evidence to back that up. Now, the defense on the flip side, like you heard, they're playing the 911 call. They're trying to put the accountability on Hannah Gutierrez-Reed that was already convicted of manslaughter a few months ago. She may potentially testify next week. And also on Dave Halls, the assistant director, who's the one that handed the gun to Baldwin when it had live ammunition in it, and he took a plea deal. So what they're saying is that it shouldn't matter if Alex said he did or he didn't pull the trigger, or if he did it on purpose or if he didn't. What's on trial right now is how did live ammunition get into that gun and the chain of custody of that gun. But it'll be interesting to see if jurors buy it. So then who should we be watching for taking the stand over the next few days? Do we think Baldwin will? Who are the other key witnesses? I mean, the big question is, Hallie, is will Baldwin take the stand in his own defense? But as you see, as this is playing out, his words are being used against him. And that is a central part of this. Baldwin told George Stephanopoulos, he also told me when I was at CNN, that he did not pull the trigger that day in October of 2021. Now those words are coming back to haunt him. If he were to take the stand, he would not only have to double down on that, it would be interesting to see what happens on cross-examination. I don't think he's going to take the stand, but that's just an opinion. All right, Chloe Malas, we'll see. You'll be there if and when he does. Thank you, friend. Appreciate it. In an exclusive new interview, a man who survived that devastating bridge collapse in Baltimore is telling his story for the first time. Julio Cervantes Suarez. He was part of the construction crew working on the Francis Scott Key Bridge when that cargo ship smashed into it. Remember, of course, the bridge collapsed. Most of the crew members did not survive. Julio did, even though he doesn't know how to swim, even though his truck landed in the water, and he somehow survived for 30 minutes before first responders got to him. He's speaking with our Tom Yamas tonight about how he managed to make it out alive. Watch.
Do you remember what was going through your head as you're falling into the water?
Sí, pensé que tal vez no íbamos a salir.
You thought you were going to die?
Sí.
Did you pray? Did you scream?
Lo que dije fue gracias a Dios por la familia que me dio, que cuidará a mi esposa, mis hijos y a mi familia. Y pues obviamente pedí perdón por todo lo que haya hecho.
She's incredibly emotional, incredibly difficult to listen to, but really a story of survival that you can watch more of tonight on NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt. And then, of course, however you're watching NBC News right now, when Tom Yamas picks it up with top story in just a few minutes. So listen, back on Capitol Hill at some point tonight, an influential Democratic congresswoman plans to take to the House floor to announce articles of impeachment against 2 Supreme Court justices. We're talking about Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She is officially filing these impeachment notices earlier today against these 2, Justices Clarence Thomas and Justice Samuel Alito. Listen, let's be real about the political prospects of this thing. Not going anywhere, all but certainly DOA in the Republican-controlled Congress. But AOC, as she's known, of course, is trying to highlight what she sees as concerns with the court, saying Thomas and Alito should have recused themselves from certain cases where she says they have, and I'm quoting here, documented and personal financial entanglements. Alito and Thomas are some of the most conservative members of the court bench, forming a key part of the majority as the court has tilted to the right. Now, the court has not responded to a request for comment on these impeachment articles, but NBC's Ryan Noble, Sahil Kapoor, is following this for us on Capitol Hill. So, Sahil, talk to us about what AOC alleges that rises to the level of impeachable conduct here, because interestingly, if I remember correctly, she suggested she was going to file these articles not when news came out about some of the conduct from Alito and Thomas, but after that pretty controversial ruling on Trump immunity, right?
Yeah, that's right, Hallie. There's a cascading series of events that led Congresswoman AOC to introduce these articles of impeachment. She says there is, quote, an unchecked corruption crisis on the Supreme Court, which she argues has now spiraled into a constitutional crisis that threatens American democracy at large. She says the pattern of refusing to recuse themselves for Justices Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito when there are consequential matters before the court, where they have all sorts of personal entanglements. She said it threatens the American rule of law, the integrity of the democracy, and one of the clearest cases, she says, for which the tool of impeachment was designed. Now, what specifically is she alleging? Let's show the graphic again. She says for Justice Samuel Alito, there's a refusal for him to recuse on cases with personal bias or prejudice involving a party that's in cases before the court. There was the issue of an upside-down flag seen outside his house, which he said was put up there by his wife. That flag has been associated with supporters of the so-called Stop the Steal movement, the people who stormed this Capitol and tried to overturn the result of the 2022 election. Clarence Thomas, his entanglements with the Republican mega donor Harlan Crow, the failure to disclose some of the gifts he received, and refusals to recuse on matters involving January 6th, when his wife, Ginny Thomas, had been a vocal proponent of trying to overturn that election result and keep Donald Trump in power, even though he lost. And Hallie, as you point out, these are highly unlikely to go anywhere in the House, but Democrats see a real messaging opportunity here, given the angst toward the Supreme Court.
Sahil Kapoor, thanks very much for that. 2 Boeing Starliner astronauts saying today they are still confident in their spacecraft, even with the issues with it, delaying their return to Earth from the International Space Station. Remember, they took off in early June for what was supposed to be like a week-long trip. But their return to planet Earth has been postponed multiple times. There's still no set date for them to come back. But one of the astronauts today says, hey, she's not stressing about it. Listen.
It feels good to float around. It feels good to be in space and work up here with the International Space Station teams. I have a real good feeling in my heart that this spacecraft will bring us home, no problem.
All right. Good vibes only there up on the Starliner. Now, NASA and Boeing today both say that Starliner already could bring the astronauts back to Earth if it had to. But the plan is to keep them up there while they can, do some more tests, try to figure out how to prevent the same issue from happening on a future trip down the road. Let's bring in Tom Costello for more on this. I got to tell you, if that were me, like first of all, it wouldn't be me, but like an astronaut up there, with the issues of the spacecraft, I don't know if I would be as cool as a cucumber as her. She's amazing.
She is. She's
really
with
her.
I've met her many times.
Yeah.
She is very chill and cool.
That's cool.
But I also had the opportunity to talk to the astronauts today on Space Station. I didn't go there. I stayed on the ground, used satellite technology.
For all of us, yes.
Exactly. And I asked them, listen, they've got a couple of problems they're working right now. They're not coming home because engineers are trying to dissect the thruster problems with the engines on Starliner. They've also got some helium leaks that NASA's not that worried about, but that's part of the overall story. And as you know, Starliner was years behind schedule, billions of dollars over budget, and they've had so many engineering challenges. So I asked the commander, Butch Wilmore, about his overall sense. Is he comfortable right now? Take a listen. Are you confident in the performance of the ship for future missions as well?
This is the world of test. This is a tough business that we're in. Human spaceflight is not easy in any regime, and there have been multiple issues with every spacecraft that's ever been designed. We trust that the tests that we're doing are the ones that we need to do to get the right answers, to give us the data that we need to come back.
Yeah, failure is not an option, he said. And when you talk about chill and cool, they both are. They're Navy test pilots, and with hair like that, who wouldn't be?
I was just take
cool.
a moment for the zero gravity hair situation there. I mean, listen, you and I have talked about how this
end of July, by the way, I should have said.
Okay, good.
They're targeting end of July.
I was going to say, because this has been a big test for Boeing. Obviously, they want to see things go right. Timeline, end of July. So pretty soon, that's just a few weeks away.
If they can get satisfactory answers on the thrusters. If not, they could be up until, we'll see, mid-August.
And they've got enough food, they've got enough everything.
They got all that. Yeah. Well, can I tell you something really amazingly weird? I have to now that I teased it.
How could you not?
Literally, the day before they were going to take off, NASA threw their suitcases off the rocket. They had to make room for a toilet fix. So they had to carry this toilet fix on the rocket. They threw off their suitcases. So what are these guys doing? They're borrowing the other astronauts' clothes and shampoo and toothpaste and everything else. Now, listen, I don't know about you. If you borrowed my clothes for a month, as much as I love you, I might say, you can keep them. It's fine.
It's the world's most far-out dormitory is what it is.
Yeah, a great view.
Very cool. Tom Costello, glad you got to talk with him today. Pretty amazing stuff. Appreciate it. Much more to get to here on the show, including people in Melbourne being told to stay inside because of toxic fumes from this huge explosion. By officials say it's going to be days before it gets put out. Plus, why a star basketball player for Team USA is withdrawing from the Olympics. An alarming first-of-its-kind study tonight is finding some of the world's most popular tampons have toxic heavy metals in them, like arsenic and lead. Researchers at UC Berkeley bought these tampons all over the world, in New York, in Athens, and in London, over the course of about a year. We're talking 30 different kinds from a bunch of different brands, and ended up finding 16 different types of metals, including mercury, copper, iron, nickel, arsenic, lead. Now, keep in mind why this is such a big deal. 80% of women use tampons during their period. It's by far the most popular way to handle a period. The FDA put out a statement saying more research still has to be done to figure out exactly how or if the body absorbs the metals in these cases. Other studies show that over time, if a body does absorb different kinds of metals, that can up the risk of serious health issues. NBC's Dr. Natalie Azar is joining us now. This is the first study to really look at toxic metals in tampons. So let's just pause there and take a moment for that, because women have been getting their periods for a very long time, right? What's interesting is that the study found organic tampons had more of these metals in them. What do we need to know about this study?
Yes. And so, I think there's a couple of take-homes, Hallie. Number one, first and foremost, while the FDA, I think, is taking this very seriously, and they are definitely planning on studying this in more detail, and specifically, are the metals just found as a contaminant? Are they actually leaching from the product? Are they entering the bloodstream? Those, we don't have answers to those questions at the moment. But yes, as you mentioned, this is the first time that a study has really specifically looked at the potential harm that these products could be causing for this reason. And it's definitely raised an alarm, as you can well imagine. I have a teenage daughter, and I'm thinking about this, for her as well. And so we are going to spend a bit of time talking about alternatives for people that they can consider if they are concerned about this.
Okay, well, let me tee you up on that. What are some of those alternatives? I think people know, obviously, pads are an option. There's those
so there are
cup things too.
Exactly. So there are two things that work kind of similarly. There are menstrual cups. There are menstrual discs, which essentially sort of capture or catch blood, if you will. There are period underwear that are like regular underwear, but they have an absorbent pad in them. And then, of course, reusable pads, which maybe our mothers or grandmothers used. Things that are made of cloth and that you can actually reuse. The issue here, and you mentioned about the organic versus the non-organic, I think that was the thing that was particularly alarming, because most of us, when we hear organic, we think that something is safe, but in fact they did find arsenic at a higher amount in organic, but lead was found in a higher amount in non-organic. So I think if you're out there and you're listening to this and you're concerned, not only can you use an alternative method, but if you're looking at the labeling, you want to look for things that maybe don't contain fragrances. Pick a product that has the least amount of components in it. And then there are 3 polys that experts are saying to stay away from: polyester, polyethylene, and polypropylene, as well as other plastics. Those are the kinds of compounds that I think you're maybe getting into that danger zone where there could be systemic absorption. It hasn't been confirmed yet, so I don't want people to panic. Okay. But this is something I think the FDA is definitely taking seriously and will absolutely be looking into. I'm so glad you said that, because I was going to ask you, bottom line, for people who do use tampons, this is not a freak out moment at this point, right? It isn't. I mean, I don't think realistically that people are going to discontinue them overnight. The actual tampon itself is made of cotton and rayon. And just a point sort of to close it up, Hallie, is that the FDA technically regulates these as medical devices, but it's loose. The manufacturers are really voluntarily, divulging what all of the ingredients are in all of their products. Some things may get in there intentionally, some things that might be by contamination. It is a wake-up call. These products need to be safe. Women need to feel safe and comfortable if they're getting this off the counter, that it's something that will be safe and effective for them. Not to mention, need to be able to have access to them, which is a conversation for a different day, which we will have. Dr. Natalie Azar, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, health officials in Colorado say they're looking into a rare human case of the bubonic plague in Pueblo County. We don't know how that person's doing. The CDC says people should avoid contact with dead animals and use bug repellent to prevent flea bites. Number 2, the Fed chair back on the Hill today, testifying he could see the Fed cutting rates if the job market slows down too much. Jay Powell says with progress on inflation, the economy looks to be in better balance now, which will give the Fed some confidence that it could undo perhaps those dramatic interest rate increases over the course of the last year or so.
Number 3, BMW now recalling nearly 400,000 cars because of an airbag problem that affects certain sedans and sports wagons from 2006 to 2012. Safety officials say they could have Takata airbags. BMW says it hasn't gotten any reports of injuries or accidents, but if you got one of these Beamers, you should take it back to the dealer. They'll replace it for free. Number 4, police in Oregon say a 3-month investigation has led to a huge theft bust of a Lego stealing ring, apparently. According to investigators, a store owner would knowingly buy sets that were stolen from thieves for cash. How many? Police apparently recovered more than 4,000 of them, valued at more than 200 grand. That's a lot of Legos. Number 5, Team USA announcing LA Clippers star Kawhi Leonard will not be playing in the Olympics. He apparently missed 12 of 14 games this past season because of a knee injury. It would have been Leonard's first time playing in the big games. Officials picked Boston Celtics guard Derek White to take his place instead. The Olympics, of course, starting in just a couple weeks right here. Where else? On NBC. When we come back, some new warnings tonight around some popular nicotine pouches you've probably seen online. Why multiple medical groups want the FDA to stop Zyn sales altogether in tonight's original. Plus, what's turning the driest desert in the world purple. So tonight's original now with in-depth reporting on a topic we've been watching. And tonight, it's the growing concerns over those popular nicotine pouches that a lot of younger people are seeing and using online. Doctors are warning that Zyn, the pouches you see here, they're more harmful than they may seem, with regulators putting out warnings and reviewing these products. Here's Vicki Witt.
Zyn is probably a great alternative to get nicotine without all the other harmful stuff.
Nicotine pouches are touted as safer than cigarettes because they're tobacco-free. The most popular brand, Zyn, which has spawned the hashtag Zinfluencer, saw more than 131 million cans sold in the U.S. in the first 3 months of this year.
How did it make you feel the first time you had one?
It gives you a shot of dopamine, so you just feel a little energized, happier, almost focused.
32-year-old Will Lamas says he quickly became addicted to Zyn. Unlike chewing tobacco, vapes, or traditional cigarettes, the pouches are discreet and come in flavors like coffee, citrus, and mint. Soon, he was using up to 20 a day.
You put it in your lip, just inside, and just leave it there for 30 minutes, and no one knows you have it.
It's really tiny?
It's very small. And I liked how it made me feel. It tasted good. And so I was hooked.
After a year, he began to have severe stomach pain, but doctors didn't know why.
I got many tests done. I went to a hospital. I got an ultrasound. I got a colonoscopy. And all they found was that my stomach was inflamed.
His symptoms are not surprising to Dr. Donna Shelley. She says nicotine is a highly addictive drug with side effects, including nausea, gastrointestinal issues, mouth ulcers, and elevated heart rate. One study said the pouches could potentially lead to dental problems like gum recession and plaque accumulation.
Why do you think these products are so popular with young people and teenagers?
One is flavors. Also, it's easier to hide that you're using a pouch. The other reason why this is popular is because it's being marketed through social media and TikTok.
While the FDA is still reviewing the safety of Zyn and similar products, multiple medical organizations have asked the agency to halt sales. And Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer also called for a crackdown on the marketing of these products.
Even the amount in this one pouch can be highly addictive.
Earlier this year, the FDA issued more than 100 warnings to retailers who were selling to minors. Last month, Zyn maker Philip Morris suspended nationwide online sales of Zyn after questions over whether they violated bans on flavored tobacco. In a statement, Philip Morris says it is committed to developing products such as Zyn that are scientifically substantiated as a better alternative to continued smoking. Zyn's marketing is directed toward legal-age nicotine users who are 21.
So the gray line was my resting heart rate while I was on Zyn. It showed me 10 beats per minute lower the week after I quit.
After researching his symptoms online, Will suspected the pouches were the problem. He quit using them.
How did your stomach feel?
Instantly better.
6 months later, he says he still has cravings.
What do you want people to know before they take one of these pouches?
I really wish I had more information when I took my first pouch.
Vicky is joining us now. It is just like, if you know anybody in the age range of, like, let's say between 12 and 22, you've probably heard about Zin, probably because it's been online. So is there any kind of push to try to block Zin stuff online, on social media, on some of these apps, or not really?
It's a great question. And one of the biggest places where these pouches are being talked about is on TikTok. And the company just got back to the team and said, look, we do not promote the trade or sale of these nicotine, synthetic nicotine pouches or any tobacco products. They say they restrict this content for anyone who's under 18. But I should note, you actually have to be 21 or older in order to purchase these pouches. They are quite easy to buy online, though, even though Philip Morris has suspended their sales. Plenty of third parties are selling them. And Hallie, I talked to my 15-year-old daughter. She says there are kids at her high school who are absolutely using these pouches because they're so discreet. This is quickly becoming the new vape. So for our parent viewers who are watching, listen, you got to talk to your kids and tell them these pouches don't come without a health risk. I should also mention TikTok says it does put up a warning so that, people are aware before any sort of tobacco content comes up that these products do come with health harms. But I think it takes more than just a little screenshot on an app, frankly. You got to have these conversations, show them this story, let them know about the health risks associated with nicotine.
Vicky Nguyen, what a great story. Thank you very much for bringing it to us. Very high interest. Appreciate it. NBC News covers hundreds of international stories every day, and because it can be tough to read or watch or listen to them all, our teams around the world have done it for you. Here's a look at what they're watching in a segment we call The Global. Out of Australia, look at this cloud of smoke here after a factory fire in Melbourne today. Officials say it could take days to contain just because it's so huge. People who live nearby were told to stay inside because of the toxic fumes. Out of France, the mayor of Paris says she has a new target date for her swim in the Seine River next week. Remember, she promised to take a dip in it before all those Olympic athletes do later this month. She has already postponed the swim before, blaming weather and a busy campaign season. It's still not super clear whether the river will be clean enough for athletes to swim in it for the games. And in Chile, what's known as the driest desert in the world is now looking pretty purple. Look at this field of flowers, thanks to an early rain springing up all over the place, these flowers, right in the middle of winter. The last time an early bloom happened like this was nearly a decade ago. Scientists say more rain could bring more flowers to the desert in the days to come. Pretty amazing. Coming up here on the show, some pretty big names outside the world of politics suggesting President Biden should step aside. We're talking about the new pressure he faces next. So ABC News is now publicly distancing itself from comments from George Stephanopoulos just about 24 hours ago, appearing to say he doesn't think President Biden can serve another 4 years. Stephanopoulos, in a statement, says he regrets talking to somebody on the street who asked him what he thinks of the president in some video posted by TMZ. Remember, less than a week ago was Stephanopoulos sitting down with President Biden in the president's first interview on TV since that debate performance widely panned as disastrous. Stephanopoulos, of course, one of the few people, not a politician, who's spent time with the president since the debate. Then there's Democratic mega donor and movie star George Clooney, who was with the president at a major fundraiser just a few weeks back. Now out with a pretty extraordinary op-ed saying he loves Joe Biden, but the party needs a new nominee. Brian Stelter is here to dig into all of this with us. And the common thread, of course, is that neither of these men are elected officials, of course. They are both familiar names to a lot of Americans here. And so I wonder if you can pull on that thread for us a bit here with the commonality.
For the last 2 weeks, we've heard lots of Democratic lawmakers and activists say, we need to see more of Joe Biden. Let's get him in person. Let's see how he performs. Right? That's been the call now for the past 2 weeks. But very few outsiders have actually spent considerable time with Biden. George Stephanopoulos is one of them. So for this ABC interviewer to say, I don't think he can serve 4 more years, that is striking. Now, I don't think Stephanopoulos should be in that position of making that statement, right? It's not up to Lester Holt next week when he interviews Biden to make that assessment. Right? That's for the viewers and the voters to decide. But Stephanopoulos, in that unguarded moment, did share what he thought. And he's far from alone. That's why the George Clooney op-ed is so important, Hallie. Clooney was with Biden just a few weeks ago, in the lead up to the debate. And here's Clooney saying at the fundraiser, he didn't see him all that well. We've also heard from Jon Favreau, who was at the same fundraiser, say the same thing today. So I think that's why these data points matter.
You mentioned the George Clooney op-ed. Let me read you the quote because it's going around, right, where Clooney writes, "It's devastating to say it, but the Joe Biden," we're showing it on screen here, "but the Joe Biden I was with 3 weeks ago at the fundraiser was not the Joe big effing deal Biden of 2010. He wasn't even the Joe Biden of 2020. He was the same man we all witnessed at the debate."
That is why this is damning for Joe Biden. Not to mention that George Clooney is one of the biggest stars in the world. And for all the ways we can poo-poo Hollywood and say that what entertainers think don't matter. Look, there they are together, right? They were together 3 weeks ago. Do you remember that day that Tom Hanks announced he had COVID? And that was the day that everybody in the world kind of realized how serious the pandemic was. I'm not saying this is the same thing. What I'm saying is that celebrity star power and wattage does matter. What these A-list stars say does matter. There's only about a dozen of them in the world that are as important as George Clooney. And here's something else he said in the op-ed. He said, this is about age, nothing more, but also nothing that can be reversed. That's the sad, honest truth here. We've all had grandparents or parents who've been aging. We've all experienced this ourselves. That's why this is starting to touch a chord with people. So I think Hallie Clooney was speaking on behalf of a lot of folks in Hollywood who've had enough with Biden, who are not going to donate any more money, who are desperate to see a change.
Brian Stelter, and of course, George Clooney donating a lot of money to the Democratic Party. That's a factor here, too. That's right. Brian, good to see you. Thanks, friend.
You too.
Still to come, what that huge push from Amazon to go more green looks like, and a big announcement from the company right here exclusively on NBC News Now. That's coming up next with the Newsmaker. Now to our Newsmaker, an interview you will only see right here on NBC News Now with Amazon, putting out its newest sustainability report and touting a major green energy milestone. Amazon is now saying it's reached the goal of matching 100% of the electricity it uses with renewable energy. That's coming 7 years before they thought that would happen. Question is it enough to offset the full impact of Amazon's operations around the world? You know, it is a huge company. It is a massive operation. And our Yasmin Vasugian got the exclusive one-on-one with the woman tasked with making this massive company even more green. Take a look.
Amazon, those packages everywhere. But as the company's tentacles expand, worth $2 trillion with its stock at record highs, there's growing scrutiny on the environmental impact of all of those deliveries. Billions of items, fuel for shipping and door-to-door delivery, and all the packaging itself. So today, they're announcing that they are ahead of schedule on their renewable energy goals. Not all electricity used by the company is from renewable sources, but the company reports its energy output is at least matched by investments in renewable projects around the globe. We sat down with the person in charge of the company's massive push to be more green.
How do you sustain your business model while maintaining kind of these sustainability practices? And also, to add on to that, knowing you need to change the consumer habits, the way in which we are consuming things in our obsessive way that's not great for the environment.
So we're in the business of serving our customers and getting our customers the products and the services that we want. And we're going to do that all day long. Yeah. We're customer obsessed. And one of the things that we're going to do is do that in the most sustainable way possible. When you choose something and it comes to you quickly, that's a best sustainability option because it's not going on an airplane. 95% of shipments now in the United States are coming without a plastic air pillow now. So we've taken a lot of the waste out of those product shipments. We've been working on, electrifying our fleet. We now have over 24,000 electric vehicles on the road.
Is the idea to have all Amazon drivers have electric vehicles at one point?
Yeah.
And what's the goal for that? When do you think you could achieve that?
Well, our ultimate goal is 2040. But we've ordered 100,000 electric delivery vans from Rivian. And so that's the world's largest order of electric delivery vans, and we aim to have those on the road by 2030.
The company reports overall emissions are down 3% this year from last year. But even Kara Hurst admits they need to move faster to reach their 2040 net zero carbon goals.
I know that Google just recently announced a delay in reaching their net zero goals because of specifically AI funding. Is it still feasible to feel as if 2040 is a goal to achieve, as Google has said it's not for them?
We are very committed to our commitment to the climate pledge to be net zero by 2040. Certainly, the world is changing all the time. Yeah. I mean, even when we set this goal in 2019, that was pre-pandemic. And Amazon grew tremendously during the pandemic. Yeah. And there were other things that happened in the world. We had supply chain crisis. We've had energy crises. We've had so many things happen. And yet, what we're showing in our sustainability report is a lot of progress.
The upcoming U.S. election looming over not only climate initiatives, but for Amazon, also other challenges, like an antitrust lawsuit brought by the Federal Trade Commission that the company is fighting, calling many of the allegations wrong and misleading, and an ongoing small but loud push by labor to unionize workers.
What is the plan if, in fact, there is an administration after November that is not necessarily on board with climate initiatives?
I've been at Amazon almost 10 years. It'll be 10 years in September. I've been here through multiple administrations. We will work with whatever administration is in place, and we will follow our science, and we will keep pursuing the initiatives that we have in front of us.
It's all not positive headlines all the time for Amazon. For instance, what you're dealing with the FTC suing over alleged monopoly practices, and what you're doing for the environment, does this counter kind of more of those negative headlines that we're seeing with Amazon and working practices?
Well, I work on sustainability, so I don't have a comment on FTC. But on sustainability, what we're doing for the environment, we're so committed to, integrating sustainability into all of our operational practices that it is so important to us to really make it part of everyday decision making.
Just last year, led in part by Amazon employees for climate justice, workers walked out of these corporate headquarters.
What do you say to those employees that are still worried about Amazon's footprint?
I think our employees are passionate about a lot of things. And so, I think the best thing to do is to get to work at helping us decarbonize. Over 10,000 Amazonians have signed up to get to work on helping us make operational changes.
Amazon could literally either make or break the environmental initiatives in this country and globally as well because of the footprint that your company has. Right? You are in a position at the top of that initiative. What is that like for you?
It's both a tremendous and daunting responsibility and the number one reason I came to Amazon. I think that it is incredibly exciting, the scale and the speed at which we operate. And it is the reason why we also started the Climate Pledge.
Yasmin is joining us now. Just a fascinating interview with a company that is, taking a lot from all sides on its sustainability, on what it does. Talk about the impact of extreme weather, right? The impact of climate change here and what that means for a company as big as Amazon.
Ironically, Hal, it was 90 degrees in Seattle yesterday when I did that interview, which is not normal, by the way, for Seattle, right? There's a heat wave happening across the country. Seattle does not normally get to 90 degrees. And everybody said that to me over and over again. And it's very much a part of the conversation, right? This extreme weather that we're dealing with, the heat waves, the storms, the hurricanes, the tornadoes. And it's affecting Amazon's bottom line. And they're going to have to kind of readjust some of their goals for that, but also readjust their business model. Released in 2023 during Amazon's financial filing, they talked about how extreme weather, the climate crisis, quote unquote, could actually affect their bottom line for one of the biggest reasons being operational costs. It costs a heck of a lot more money to do what they are doing, get those packages to where they are going, the thing they're known for most, during some of these extreme climate crises. I asked Kara about how they kind of adjust their business model, how they keep doing their job. She kept saying to me, the customer is the most important thing, right? How do you adjust during this climate crisis? Because they also help with disaster relief. And she talked about making sure that distribution centers are in the places that they need to be, making sure their workers are living in the places they need to live as well. But they acknowledge that this climate crisis could very well affect their bottom line and the goals that they have set to be zero carbon by 2040, Hal.
Yasmin Vasu, again, great reporting. Thank you very much for bringing it to us. Quick reminder, we're going to have full coverage from the Republican National Convention starting next Monday in Milwaukee. That's right, I'll see you there starting at 5 o'clock as you're watching right now here on NBC News Now. See you then. We'll be back with more coverage from here in Washington right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.
From destroying illegal oil labs in Colombia's dense jungle to mining for rare gems in Afghanistan's rugged mountains, we traveled across the world to explore the 12 riskiest jobs that take patience and guts. Our first stop is Sri Lanka, where men crawl inside deep pits searching for sapphire and other valuable gems.
Samaranayaka Gay has lived his whole life in Ratnapura, which translates to the city of gems.
වෙන රැකියාවක් කරන්න නෑනේ මේ ඉන්න උගත් තුන් උනත් මේ වෙනත් රැකියාවක් නැතිකමට මේව කරනවා.
His morning ritual includes preparing betel leaf and tobacco. Workers chew on this stimulant all day long for energy. The pit is 40 feet deep.
මේ රිට තමයි පාවිච්චි කරන්නේ මේ වලට බහින්න උඩට යන්න. මේ රිට හරි භයානකයි. මාස 3ක් විතර යනකොට මේ රිට දිරනවා.
The nearby river often seeps in, dumping sand, soil, and water into the tunnels. Some underground mines are even deeper than the water table. So workers need to constantly run a pump to drain the pit. But the muddy water is often dumped on the surrounding land and could make it unfit for farming. This video was filmed during a particularly heavy rainy season. That's why the tunnels are even more flooded than usual, and that can cause them to collapse. In 2015, 4 people were killed in Ratnapura when a mine caved in. To reinforce the pit, miners use logs from local rubber trees. They peel off the bark, which can trap moisture and make the wood rot easily. Then they gather a local fern called kekela. There are around 6,000 active mines in Sri Lanka. All are privately owned, but need licenses from the National Gem and Jewelry Authority. And it can take over a year to clear out all the gems from a single pit. Today, there are about 11 people crammed in here. The lack of oxygen makes it difficult to breathe, so they use air pumps to ventilate the tunnel through these tubes. Gases like methane are also naturally produced here.
ඒ හුමාල එනවා. ඒ හුමාල ගිනි ගන්නවා වෙලාවකට. සමහර ගිනි ගන්න නැතුවම මේ හුස්ම ගන්න බැරුව එහෙම කලාන්තේ දාලා වැටිලා තියෙනවා.
Years of experience have taught them to guess the direction of the deposits.
හරිම අසීරුයි මේ වගේ දෝනාවක් වුණායි යන්නේ. මේක කොහොම හරි අයින් කළා තමයි මේ ඉල්ලම ගන්න ඕනේ. මේ ගල් යට ඉල්ලම තියෙන්නේ. මේ ඊළඟට එහෙම ගොඩක් තියෙනවා.
Workers pack the gravel into sacks that can weigh up to 45 pounds.
තුනටික ගේනවා මොකද බර උස්සනවනේ.
They rinse the gravel in a nearby stream to remove mud and sand.
මේව කරකවනකොට ඒ බර තියෙන මණික මේ වට්ටිය අඩියට බහිනවා.
But the majority of the stones are worth nothing. On average, miners like Samaranaikage earn a basic salary of 1,200 rupees per week. That's about $3, and in Sri Lanka, it's enough to buy about a gallon of milk. But when they find a precious gem, they hand it over to the mine owners, who sell it to middlemen.
දැන් පතල් මේ කම්කරුවෙක්ගේ මේ ඒ තරම් ගෙවල් දොරවල් වලත් මේ ඒ තරම් විශාලට නැහෙනි. නමුත් වෙලෙන්දාගේ වෙලෙන්දා තට්ටු මහල් නිවාස ගාලා ඒ අය තමයි මේ සුපෝකභෝගීව ජීවත් වෙන්නේ.
Ratnapura is bursting with gemstones because of the area's geological foundation. Underground rocks here are subjected to high levels of heat and pressure that changes their chemical and physical composition, often creating gemstones. Heavy rains, landslides, and rivers can move these deposits and carry them downstream. So miners also look for stones in the Kalu Ganga. They create a scaffolding and dive to the bottom to dig them up. Or they use blades attached to wooden poles called mamotis. That can cause extensive damage to riverbeds. It's why mines like these are more heavily regulated by the country's gem authority. But experts say underground pits are also harmful. Miners remove native vegetation when they clear out the land. And some pits aren't filled back in once mining is complete, causing accidents. The industry as a whole employs nearly 100,000 Sri Lankans. The stones are sold at wholesale markets like this one in Ratnapura. Chaminda Athuralia Gamage's workshop has been around since 2002. Workers cut the gems with a machine called a Hana Purua.
ඊට පස්සේ මැණික් කැපීමෙන් ඉතුරු වෙන මේ මැණික් කුඩු ඒවත් ගන්නවා සාමාන්‍යයෙන් විසිතුරු අත්කම් නිර්මාණ කරන්න.
The smaller pieces are later shaped and polished into individual gems. A 1-carat blue sapphire from Sri Lanka can range from $450 to $1,600, depending on the 4 C's: color, cut, clarity, and carat, or weight. The largest star sapphire in the world was found in Ratnapura in 2016. It's called the Star of Adam, and it's worth $300 million. While global demand is growing, the gems are still refined in a traditional way. At this workshop in Ratnapura, Sunil is using a centuries-old technique to enhance the color of the gems. He places them on coals as hot as 2000 degrees Fahrenheit. Then he blows on the embers for several hours, which alters the color and clarity. Artisans say this method has been used for more than 1500 years. But Sri Lanka's gem mining industry is much older. Jewels adorn thrones of Sri Lankan royalty from 540 BC. Kings from the island often sent gems to foreign lands to establish trade and relationships. Venetian explorer Marco Polo even mentioned the gems in his journals. But a political and economic crisis has put this historic gem industry at risk. Hundreds of thousands of Sri Lankans took part in widespread protests last year and ousted President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. They blamed his government for high inflation as prices of food and fuel spiked. And that directly
සාමාන්‍යයෙන් මේ කර්මාන්තයලත් පතල් කර්මාන්තයලත් පොඩි පොඩි බලපෑම් සිද්ධ වුණා. මොකද දැන් තෙල් අර්බුදේ හින්දා අතරම පතල් කෙරෙන්නේ ඔය පතල් මැෂින්ස් ගොඩාක්ම ඩිපෙන්ඩ් වෙන්නේ ඩීසල් මත. ඉතින් ඔය ඩීසල් කේස් එක හින්දා ගොඩක් පතල් කෙරෙන එක පොඩ්ඩක් අඩු වුණා.
Samara Naikage's wife Pia Sili Ihalage says their family had a hard time making ends meet.
තදින්ම බලපාව අපිට කියන්නේ මේ මෙහා කරන රස්සාවනුව ගාදුරට බෙහෙත් ගන්න එතනින් ගියාම කෑම බීම ටික පවා ගොඩක් අපහසුතාවයකට මුහුණ දුන්නා. පතල් රස්සාව නැති වුණා. පතල් රස්සාව ඉතින් මාස ගාණක්ම මාස කොහමත් 6ක් 7ක් වගේම නැත්තටම නැති වුණා.
But no matter what the circumstances, Pia Sili says the work is always unpredictable. Sometimes miners can go weeks without finding a valuable gem. And although Samara Naikage has been doing this for decades, he wants a different path for his only child.
ඉස්කෝලේ යනවා දැන් මේ පාර විභාගෙ ලියලා ප්‍රතිඵල එනකම් බලාගෙන ඉන්නවා. එයා පතල් වලට මන්න යොමු කරන්නේ.
These dusty tunnels in Afghanistan hide precious jewels worth millions. Miners carved these caves with dynamite left behind by decades of war. Habibullah is hunting for a green stone called berush or tourmaline.
او کانې دلته خسته تیګه پکې راشي نمونه پکې راشي رګ پکې راشي نو دومره خوشحالي چې د تنه شم ویل ماته نه د چاغه خپل واده تم سړی دوه نه خوشحاليږي څنګه دې ته چې خوشحاليږي.
About $3 trillion worth of precious minerals are buried inside mountains across Afghanistan. Habib says the mines are not owned or regulated by anyone. For decades, insurgent groups and the Taliban mined and smuggled the jewels out of the country and used the profits to buy weapons. Even today, 95% of gems leave the country illegally. So, how did rocks become more precious than human life here? And why are people in one of the most resource-rich countries in the world still struggling with poverty? The province of Kunar was one of the deadliest places in Afghanistan.
او مزدوري درته زموږ په ولایت کې د څه مزدوري نشته چې موږ لاړ شو خپل مزدوري وکړو او موږ خپل بچو د پاره خپل ځان د پاره رزق پیدا کړو.
Decades of fighting forced thousands of families to flee their homes. But Habib and his 9 cousins grew up around here and know every inch of these mountains. Habib hikes for 10 hours to reach a campsite nearly 10,000 feet above sea level. They'll live here mining for the next month.
د ښه معدن خاصیت کان خاصیت دا دی چې دا شوګر ولري دا سوخته ولري.
Habib first spotted tourmaline in these mountains 25 years ago. Now, with decades of experience, the 55-year-old is the leader of his group. And with that short prayer, the men are ready to crawl down 300 feet. The veins are actually magma that cooled under high pressure, creating emerald and tourmaline. They're already 300 feet deep, and they can't go any farther without air. This narrow tube pumps their oxygen from a ventilator above ground. Inhaling all this dust can scar workers' lungs for life. But nothing stops these men. Today, they're going even deeper into the mine because they've gotten everything they can from these walls. To get farther into the bedrock, they drill holes and fill them with dynamite. The bedrock that contains the gems is often brittle and could easily collapse with heavy drilling. In 2019, 30 miners were buried alive at a gold mine in another province.
د مر سره لوبي دي کنه مر سره لوبي دي کنه دا بمونه دي دا دغه دي موږ د سیمه جهازه جامه نه لرو ډېر مړ شو.
The dynamite is all set. Now they have less than a minute to get out of this tunnel.
زود برین ها
په ټوله ورځ کې زمونږ 3 ساعته نه دی 3 ساعته زمونږ خالي د دمای چې هغه انفجار ورکوو په دې سره چې مونږ د سار چې د مانځه نه وروسته کار شروع کړو تر د ماښام د شپې د 10-11 پورې مونږ کار کوو.
They usually go back in to retrieve the gems. But today they left early because they heard the Taliban was on its way. During the 20-year war, the Taliban and other insurgent groups operated most of these mines. Reports suggest they were earning up to $20 million a year smuggling jewels out of the country. And the gems continue to fund the Taliban today, after the group regained control of Afghanistan. Meanwhile, people like Habib struggle to find buyers, since most countries don't openly trade with Afghanistan.
من د ماخام ډوډۍ چې وخورو د سار ته زمونږ هیڅ هم نه وي ان دومره فشار او دغه زمونږ په خپل په دې ذهنونو پراته وي چې یا الله اوس څه وکړو دلته که معدن نه لاس اخلو.
His only option is selling to local jewelers. He divides the money among his workers. Habib makes about $140 a month, nearly double the average salary in this country. But he has to feed his wife and 12 children. And it's hard to sell his gems for more.
اگه مثل کشورهای دیگه وره درست استخراج شود که درز نداشته باشه اون مقدر قیمتش بالاست.
Noor Ahmad Shirzad has been polishing gems for more than 30 years. He learned the craft from his cousin in Pakistan when his family lived there as refugees during the Afghan Civil War. But he returned in the early 2000s and set up a workshop with his brothers here in Kabul.
به می رقم است. هر دانه که آبدار است، رنگدار است، شفاف است و سایز دانه کلانش هم قیمتی است.
He works mostly with blue lapis lazuli.
باز از 10 کیلو یزی 1 کیلو این نگین پاک شدگی میبره. که کمک ور فکرت دگست شو نباشه فکرت به کارت انگشت میزنی چشم اوگار میشه متابل چندین بار ما از آینه که استفاده نکنیم.
Noor's younger brother, Amir Ahmad Shirzad, runs the store upstairs. His son helps out before school. They sell everything from dishes to jewelry and sculptures. Amir says he prices items based on the weight of the stones and how long each piece took to make. He even sells the type of stone Habib mines. And he makes these prayer bead necklaces himself. He says business has been tough lately.
قبلا خب خارجی ها بود مشتری ها پروازا بود مشتری های ما می آمدن خارجی ها بود افغان های خودمون بود در نمایش های بین المللی اشتراک میکردن.
Back in Kanar, when Habib isn't busy mining, he's working on his new home just minutes away from the mines.
منشنه د پټول غواړي د پټه کو نور کاګل نه به کو صفا به کو جوړه به کو چنو به تور کو صفا به کو به په تو ژوند او زندګي ته جوړ شي
دا په څومره وخت باندې تکمیل شو
دا اوس تقریبا یو 15 لشپړه سورې دی ونیولې دا منګه لا جوړه کړه د لاس کو سانه لپاره.
He will no longer have to walk 10 hours to get to work. While he risks his life hunting for gems, it has helped him pay for this new home. And Habib is thankful for that.
ان شاء الله زله ته امید لرم چې مړ نو ماغه پر خپل خدمت او ایمانداری کوم.
This man is hunting for an aphrodisiac that some people have called a natural Viagra. It only forms at high altitudes, like here in the Himalayas. One misstep and the drop is 15,000 feet. People across South Asia have taken Shilajit for centuries to improve libido and to treat infertility.
शिलाजीत की जो आज तक मेजर मार्केटिंग हुई है वो एज ए टेस्टोस्टेरोन बूस्टर हुई है.
Now, people are paying hundreds of dollars to get their hands on it. But while it's soaring in popularity around the world, so are the fakes.
लोग तो कभी-कभी ऐसे लोगों को ठगा लेते हैं कि शिलाजीत है ये है वो, कोई लोग नकली भी बेच लेते हैं.
So is Shilajit really a miracle product? And is the risk of finding it worth the hype? The valley of Padar is one of the most remote regions in Jammu and Kashmir. And Manohar Lal is the only one in his small village who dares to harvest Shilajit.
हमारे गांव का कोई बंदा इस पहाड़ी में जाना नहीं चाहता, बोले ये डेंजरस काम है.
Today, he's heading out with his son Lakshmi and their friend Aditya. The journey to the Pir Panjal range in the lower Himalayas will take them about 2 to 3 days.
जब पहले गए थे डर तो बड़ा डेंजरस वाला रास्ता था, डर तो लग ही जाता है.
जंगलों में तो भालू भी होता है, रीछ भी होता है, तो थोड़ा देख के जाना पड़ता है.
They're going to climb up 12,000 feet. That's the height at which Shilajit forms in the Himalayas. It's also found in Russia, Tibet, and even the north of Chile. After 10 hours of hiking, the men spot some deposits. But they're sitting on a steep rock wall, and the only way of getting there is climbing. Now, Manohar is on his own. He uses nothing but his own body for support. It's mind over matter, walking on the edge at 12,000 feet.
डेंजर से आस्ते-आस्ते से जाना पड़ता, देख के जाना पड़ता है. अगर कहीं फिसल गए तो मर भी सकते हैं, गिर जाते हैं.
Finally, he reaches the black Shilajit rocks. It's hard like cement, so he needs a chisel to break it off. They're found in the cracks and crevices of mountains where rain and snow can't get in.
ये समझो पत्थर की चर्बी.
It forms when microorganisms decompose certain plants over centuries. What's left behind is Shilajit.
मान लो जिस तरह गाय का मूत्र की खुशबू होती है, इस तरह शिलाजीत की भी खुशबू होती है. शक के भी पता चलता है कि शिलाजीत है. ये कड़वी होती है.
Manohar usually extracts it in spring and then again in fall before the snow can get to it.
पुरख जो बोलते हैं कि गर्मी में सांप होते हैं, शिलाजीत को ये चाटते हैं, इसको काफी पसंद करते हैं, इसलिए इसको गर्मी में नहीं जाते हैं.
After collecting about 500 grams, they call it a day and set up a camp to stay overnight.
Everybody is trying to be healthy and eat good food. तो उसकी वजह से लोग चाहते तो हैं उनको शिलाजीत मिले.
Shilajit has its roots in Ayurvedic medicine, which originated in India over 3,000 years ago. It's a traditional healing system that uses natural products. And ancient texts talk about its healing powers. But Shilajit can't be eaten in its raw form. So Manohar first cooks the rocks. They dissolve in boiling water. He filters out sand and other impurities.
हम इसकी फिल्ट्रेशन करते हैं अराउंड कई बार 2 बार, कई बार 4 या 5 बार भी करनी पड़ती है जब तक हमारे को दिखे कि कोई भी इम्प्योरिटीज जो हैं वो उसमें नहीं रह गई हैं.
Here in Kashmir, they have a unique recipe for it.
पुराने शास्त्रों में भी लिखा है और पुराने ट्रेडिशनली जम्मू एंड कश्मीर में इसी तरह से शिलाजीत बनाते
areas where police had managed to keep off the protesters from accessing Kenyatta Avenue since morning along Madison Street. And also Marian Nyambura had given us the account from the county of Nyakuru, so did Crispin from the county of Kisii, and as well Francis Mtalaki in Mombasa County, and Laura Otieno from the county of Kisii. And these are the demonstrations that have denounced the Finance Bill 2024, now withdrawn following the events of the 25th of June, when the demonstrators had briefly overrun Parliament and members of the National Assembly who were forced to flee as a result of the situation. The president thereafter, a day later, announced the withdrawal of the bill that the protesters said had contained punitive taxation measures. Among other major policy pronouncements that followed the withdrawal of the bill included the scrapping of the state funding for the office of the First Lady, as well as the president coming on the express gauge youthful Kenyans online and filling questions and responding to some of the concerns that were raised. Also banning officials normally take part in, saying that the Attorney General now dismissed, or the Office of the Attorney General will come up with the underpinning legislation, and also disbanding his cabinet. MPs who were forced to lie low in the aftermath of Parliament's overrunning by the protesters yesterday. Some appeared with the president in Nakuru County, where he as well accused foreign elements of backing the protests here in the country, but the protesters are not willing to back down, calling for an end to corruption, injustice and inequality. What we had witnessed today are some of the organized protests across major counties in the country. With me in studios, Kevin Osido, who has been with us since the last 2 hours as we take account of what has been happening across the counties where I have listed. Kevin, yesterday the president also cited foreigners as those who are funding the protests, saying that they either appreciate Kenya's democracy, style up, or ship out. He meant the Ford Foundation. And it's not surprising, is it, that blame must fall somewhere for the government?
Precisely. It is quite a surprising narrative from His Excellency the President, and it really shows the gaps in terms of agencies and institutions that are supposed to assist the president in his leadership and governance of the country. And some of these include the DCI, or the intelligence, either NIS, National Intelligence Service, working with the investigative arm, but really largely the NIS. And it reminds me of a time when I think one of those big two indicated that there were big issues with some of those state agencies that they work with, so that the kind of information that the president receives should be quite factual, with zero to almost no doubt. That when you mention an organization like the Ford Foundation, of course, I'm sure that it will not stop there. And I've seen that the foundation has also made some rebuttal or a response to the president's comments. But I liked the rebuttal because he's reminding the president that even as you talk about us as having created some emergencies, some issues within your government, we have supported and worked with your government in a number of issues. And in some of these, you have been personally present. And in some of the photos that were attached there, of course, the president of the Ford Foundation, Mheshimiwa Darren Walker, indicating that he attended the state function that was put in respect to our president when he attended, when he was there for the state visit of the United States of America. They also indicated that they supported the Africa Climate Summit, which was hosted by our president, which was one of those global checkpoints, or if not milestones, in the climate governance conversations, and many, many other things. How Ford Foundation works, and I think the long and short of it is that you cannot blame the teacher for having empowered the student, even if it is true. The organizations that are purportedly assumed who have participated in these protests. Of course, the Gen Zs have said we are leaderless, we are fearless, we do not have anyone supporting us. And I remember even in one of the clips, they were pushing away some of the very obviously expected or suspected leaders of the civil society, and they were saying, you are not our leader, go away, we don't know you on this one, wewe sio kiongozi wetu. And so to get back to an organization like Ford Foundation, that whose processes of grant making are very clear, they have global contributors, and for you to get a grant from the Ford Foundation, there's a process that you also go through. As a grantee, you apply, take audits, they undertake those capacity assessment of the organizations. I say this because I know, having been a grantee of the Ford Foundation, and some of the processes that we undertook with some of the counties that we worked in, particularly for the health, strengthening health engagement with citizens of Nairobi County, have really paid back. And today, if you walk to some of those facilities that we partnered with, you can actually count a lot of progress that has been made. So the president, in my view, needs to probably be properly advised by Foreign Affairs and the agencies that deal with bilateral engagements in our country. And particularly, he should be able to listen and just gather evidence and information before a statement like he made really speaks out. So there are two things here, Abdikadir. One is that the president knows that indeed the Ford Foundation supported or financed these processes, or on the other side, propagandists are feeding our president with propaganda information. And that is a little bit disturbing. It is clearly unfortunate, and I think it does not set foot even for other processes and other organizations that would want to work with the civil society and even the government of the Republic of Kenya.
And they said in the much-awaited statement, since 1963, the Ford Foundation has a rich history of commitment to ensuring the independence of East Africa's democratic institutions, including our support for civil servants and technical experts who help establish an independent Kenya. While we acknowledge they added the right of Kenyans to peacefully advocate for a just and equitable country, we stress any actions or speech that are hateful or advocate violence against institution, individual, or community. We do not fund or sponsor the recent protests and against the finance bill, and have a strictly non-partisan policy for all our grant making. And this is in its opposite of what the president said following the accusations he labeled against the foundation as funding instability, chaos, and what he termed as an affront on our democracy.
Yeah, quite the opposite, because in fact in some of those documents, and they are available online, if you go through them, they even assess your allegiance to any political formations. They even ask you whether any of your board members belong to any political party. They ask you about your submissiveness to any political persuasions in the country. And I think those are clear marks that really indicate an organization that is apolitical, an organization that is disinterested in any political aspirations. And as I said earlier on, if the contributions of the Ford Foundation and many other organizations, because there are quite a number of foundations that engage with governance and justice, law and order, and many other aspects of service delivery, including health, agriculture, and so many of them, if they empower the citizens and they're able to empower the communities to be able to ask the right questions that even see to it that offices like the presidency and in the person of His Excellency the President respond to it to the extent that he even dissolves his cabinet, he withdraws a finance bill which people are uncomfortable with, then that is those are progressive aspects, Abdi, that I don't think should be attributed to an organization that is working so hard, as you have read from their statement, to be able to provide spaces for citizens to learn, for their awareness to be emboldened, and for the opportunity to hold their government's account. So I think those are concerns that maybe the president and his handlers will need to think through. And I think our foreign affairs protocols in terms of looking at how we engage with other agencies and other countries, I think will really come to the fore. And it baffles me because, as we also heard, we have not seen a clear response. For example, in a number of the X charts, we also saying reject the World Bank finance bill, reject the IMF finance bill. We have not seen in an equal measure the government coming up to really distance itself from World Bank and IMF, having been presumably been part of crafting the finance bill. And I think that is a double speak from His Excellency the President, but it's a good thing because it speaks a lot in terms of how, as a country, we also intend to engage with our friends who inform the high commissions, the embassies, and so many other foundations and private sector institutions.
Yeah, and then with the yesterday's tour of, development tour of Nakuru County, the President also talked about pledges that he made and promises in the construction of projects, some that are there needing refurbishment, and explaining the cause as to why it's key as to embarking on that path. It seems he is more or less now a reset button for the President, given what we had witnessed of a month or more where he was largely confined to thinking about making major policy pronouncements or decisions, and now coming back to his traditional personality where he speaks to the populace through the sunroof of the presidential car, and also making largely statements that in public yesterday appeared to be what he fancies most as his trademark.
And these actions, Abdi, need to inform the next phase of the cabinet. I would be very uncomfortable with a president who wants to be everywhere. He wants to be the one to open border sheds. He wants to be the one to open, markets like what he did in Nakuru. He wants to be the one to address all worshippers every Sunday. He wants to be the one to go to football tournaments every Saturday. The president should be presidential. And there is a very clear historical governance and leadership aspirations of the presidency of a president, and why you are expected to engage in a presidential manner. And if you look at in some of the jurisdictions, these are people who are expected to to hold a zero iota of doubt. Where, for instance, when you speak, your word is, I wouldn't say law, because we have a constitution that really protects the sovereignty of the people, but your word is expected to be a word that people can be able to rely and have faith and trust in. And that is why the president should be very keen in terms of the people that he appoints to his cabinet, to be able to therefore do the kind of things that we are seeing him doing. Because having observed President William Ruto when he was a deputy president, and even before then when he was MP for Eldoret North, and his growth in the
cabinet minister in the Grand Coalition.
Exactly, even a cabinet minister in the Grand Coalition and all that. I think that President William Ruto is making more mistakes as president, as opposed to as a deputy president, as opposed to a cabinet minister. Of course, he made some mistakes there. He was fired sometime, I think, and even more mistakes as opposed to when he was an MP. And it is expected that now he is president. But part of the reasons why these mistakes are being made is because our president is talking too much and is promising so much that ultimately he is unable to deliver. And in his inability to deliver also rises the question of the surrounding his preparedness, to be able to drive the government for the remaining part of his presidency, and indeed even the readiness to govern. Because those are some of the questions that people raised when he took over the reins of power. I remember when he was reading to us the names of his cabinet on the grounds of State House, when it came to, I think, the Inspector General of Police, he was... Yeah. I think that was IG.
The former IG.
Yeah, the former IG.
Yes. Yeah.
And it was like there was something going on. There was some conversations going on with the IG. And he looked quite unprepared. He looked a little bit disgruntled and misinformed, even about conversations that are supposed to go on to inform the people that he is appointing to critical offices like the Inspector General of Police. And voila, the IG resigned, And this points back to the readiness to govern as a president. So coming back to the people, and you want to be the same person, I think that will be asking too much to the president, and is behaving like a master fix-it on issues which we expect that people around him should be able to advise him, to guide him, and therefore, of course, listen to him execute as the head of the executive, which is expected by constitution to therefore implement a number of these programs. But that boils down to the so many questions again that people will raise around other agencies like government. The youth will raise concerns about youth fund, where it is expected that part of the reason why they're on the streets is maybe because it's a Tuesday and a whole day is gone because people are demanding for their rights, but their rights that there are institutions in office, institutions of governance and people in office that are supposed to be responding to them. So the president needs to do much of the listening, much of the engagement, and using the other agencies of government to pick information. If it is about youth fund, what is the issue with youth fund? He needs to have asked for a database or a list of the beneficiaries and ask questions around, why am I not seeing critical aspects of our country in the various areas of the counties in this list as beneficiaries? Why are we not seeing the lots of monies that presumably supposed to be given by youth fund or AGPO or the other funds, including women fund, being subjected or being distributed to the critical sectors of the demographics that today we are now seeing on the streets.
Yeah, and with no way forward on the talks that he called for, stakeholders, some feeling not included, no invitation sent to that effect, and as to how the talks will proceed. What then needs to happen? Because he has to reconstitute a cabinet. He said he will engage with other stakeholders, but still it appears that we are into a period of the swinging pendulum, given that we are not ending up with the most important parts of what ought to be happening, for example, reconstitution of the cabinet. But again, he has to consult, as he said in his on Thursday last week during an address to the nation. But that isn't happening, and the Gen Zs aren't relenting either. I mean, the sort of crisis seems to be...
The president, again, needs to stop being I know it all. He needs to stop being master fix it. He needs to stop assuming that Kenyans expect all the answers from him. He is not an angel. The president is neither an angel nor is he some strange creature. He's a human being like all of us. And therefore, there is no problem in saying, hapa kwenye nimefika, munisaidie. Now, how to do this, in my view, would be engage with the people who are aggrieved. Because you cannot go to a negotiating table without necessarily focusing on the issues. And the issues have been raised. The president has done very well to concede to some of them. But as a president, and acting presidential, being who the president is expected to be, you cannot keep people guessing and hoping. And there is no sin in opening it up and saying, send me a list of people that you think would be able to fill up these positions. Because ultimately, the vetting is going to be done at the National Assembly, and I'm looking forward to how they are going to get back from their recess when they do in next month. I think it's on 23rd, especially given the lack of authority from Parliament, from the people went there and took over the sovereignty. They ran away with the mess and all that. How the Speaker, Mheshimiwa Moses Wetangula, is going to reconvene, I think is going to be quite a dramatic aspect. And coming back again with a list or the expectation to vet new cabinet secretaries is going to be another injury to the National Assembly, which the president can be able to cure by purely being a very amiable person to the people. And this is not supposed to be in churches, because a church is a very organized place. You go there as a guest, then you are given your time to speak, which in my view is even awkward. Even as a president, he should stop going to these churches and making the kind of remarks that he is making. The president is able to have his own arrangements and platforms to speak to the people. If he wants to meet with the religious leaders, he is able to do it. If he wants to meet with the born-again Christians and Muslims and Hindus and all the religions, he is able to do so. He should stop taking advantage of closed spaces and have his own spaces where he is inviting Kenyans to be able to share. There is no problem with my friend Hussein Mohammed engaging the president on an X space and just asking him for names of possible candidates for the cabinet secretary, because the Gen Zs have said that we are going to be as detailed on the names of the people that you are going to send to us. And if they have any iota of mud or dirt, we are going to send them back to you. That, Abdi, will dent the execution of mandate of the president, because he will be submitting names which are thrown out, and parliamentarians are also going to be very focused in terms of vetting these people for the fear of being kusalimiwa tena. You send the wrong list and they come to you. They even know where they live. They know where some of them go for lunch or where some of them spend their time on weekends. They will come and say hello to you there. So that really is a proper mechanism of keeping Parliament or National Assembly in check, to also exercise the responsibility to vet the cabinet secretaries.
Okay.
But the president needs to therefore sit back and ask himself, how can I re-engage other than on top of my vehicles and all that?
Are we then likely to see a different scale altogether of public participation when the president names and sends those names to Parliament for vetting? Is it going to be as engaging as we had seen the public focus on issues of good governance?
It is. In fact, this is going to be much more robust. It's going to have a lot of energy. I am sure that even at the gallery of the National Assembly, people will ask to go and sit there. But that is really on the D-Day of the vetting, because there is something that is publicized, they are put on the newspaper, and people pick it up very fast and load it on their even WhatsApp status. So the information about the vetting is going to be very open. But ahead of that, the moment the president names his proposed cabinet, people are going to begin to dig information and to begin to raise concerns if there are concerns to be raised. And the president therefore needs to be clever around that particular time. And if there are issues where, if there are candidates that he probably thinks that are going to be very dirty, quote unquote, in the eye of the Kenyan citizens, don't overemphasize that they have to be in the cabinet, because that is going to make you look unreasonable. It's going to make you look like someone who does not listen. It's going to make you look like somebody who, in fact, even the occurrences where Kenya is at right now, you pay very little attention to some of these issues. So the president has been put between a rock and a hard place, and it's a good thing, because, as we said, he is now present, he can engage, but he needs to expand his modalities of engagement. He needs to think beyond the people around him and even make phone calls to people. If it is Abdikadir you want to put in the ICT docket, make a call to him, have coffee with him, meet with him. There could be people who are even disinterested, especially given the kind of narrations that we have seen. Finally, on this, there is also the expectation that there's going to be a bilateral engagement with the opposition, and that some of the people from Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga's side will also find their faces into the cabinet. If the president has those kind of intentions, I think he needs to also be very open and communicate them to Kenyans, that based on what we have seen, there are individuals that are in the opposition but don't carry the opposition mantle. Is it possible that we can bring them to the cabinet? And I'm sure that given the fact that the narrative around being tribeless and being, broad-based that has been carried by Gen Zs, I don't think they are going to mind if it is Kevin Osido, who might not be a member of Azimio, but is a Luo from the Luo ethnic community that has been nominated into the cabinet and is able to deliver. I don't think that we will be, boldened into going into ethnic engagements. People are now getting much more interested in delivery, efficiency, accountability, and transparency.
Okay. We had talked about the withdrawal of the finance bill by the government, the scrapping of funding for some offices, coming to the express by the president, and disbanding his entire cabinet. These were some of the demands that the Gen Zs had. What then next for them? What do you think is the ultimate goal that they want to achieve?
I am seeing them saying Ruto must go, which is possible, but is also hard. It is possible because the president can decide and say, I am tired. Anyway, I have listened to you, and the way it normally comes, the first time he came, he was breathing fire, and we thought he was going to really abuse us on TV. He even didn't tell us, God bless you and God bless Kenya on his first address. But then on the following day, he came and he was very contained, he was looking fatherly, and he looked very responsive and shaken, and even finished by saying, God bless you. And in the X chat with the youth, he even prayed for the youth there. So we are hoping that the end goal for this particular process, from the Ruto must go perspective, and in one of the X chats, I think either yesterday or the other day, they were saying, when we say Ruto must go, we mean Ruto and everyone associated with him, including the deputy president. Now, you cannot talk like that in the context of governance in Kenya. because we have a way in which the president is relinquished of his duties. There is a clear mechanism that has to be followed. If it is, and that is only on an impeachment process, or God forbid, the president passes on, or if there is a coup by whoever wants to undertake a coup, of which again there are response measures of coups, and I think Kenya has a sample of a history of the 1982 coup and how it was dealt with. On impeachment processes, there is a role for any citizen who wants to undertake that. It has to go to Parliament. The National Assembly has its mandate. The Senate has its opportunities. And so the Ruto must go perspective, I think, is too hard, is too far-fetched. But the beauty of it, Abdi, is that it is already giving us certain results. And that part of the demands that were made by the Gen Zs or by the youth are already being addressed by the president. So the way forward, therefore, is to identify, even as we talk about leaderless and all these things, is to look at where is this pressure coming from. And it is not in the abductions. You cannot purport to want to speak or to dialogue with people and you are still abducting them. And I'm saying you are still abducting, not in reference to the president, but that he has the opportunity and the responsibility to call the Inspector General of Police or the DCI or whoever is abducting people and ask him, can you stop this issue? He has the power to call for a blanket amnesty for any young person or any Kenyan who is behind bars, having been arrested for participation in this particular demonstrations. And that is the power of the presidency. So for him to be able to move forward, he has to come again with a very clean slate. The president does not have to be seen to be pushed, like I saw our good friend Linus Kaikai doing, for him to apologize for families that had been shot by the police. In his presidency, he said that no Kenyan will lose any life under my watch on a bullet of the police. The president can be humble enough to apologize and say, I am sorry, this has happened under my watch, and we will ensure that this does not repeat itself. And therefore, it softens the hearts and the minds of the Kenyans who are still holding certain aggravations, and people who still have hard stances in terms of looking at what I would call a best alternative to a negotiated agreement. Because this is a negotiation that is going on. And it is going on because failure to respond to some of these issues, these demonstrations that we are seeing, are going to continue happening. As they happen, Kenya is losing its GDP. We are losing income. And services really are not being delivered to them.
And that was the next point of my question line, which is on then the effect this has on businesses and livelihoods. Have you seen Central Business District, where the protests were concentrated in Nairobi, had many businesses shut down because of safety concerns? Some were looted in Kitengela, as our reporter Melita Oletenges in Kitengela had briefed us, and also some other parts of the country where they had broken into business premises. This is not the objective of the protest, is it? And rather one that had called for good governance.
This is not the objective of the protests. But it is happening this way because even as a country and as a people, we have failed to be able to protect the constitutional aspirations of right to protest, Article 37 of the Constitution. And in certain jurisdictions, as we were discussing earlier on, there are special spaces that have been set aside for protesters, for demonstrators. And really, protesters are even protected by the law enforcement agencies or the police, and you are told, we will open up the space for you to go and protest, do everything that you want to do. If you have a petition, because a protest must have an output, where you either present a petition, you have a memorandum, or the prayers to whoever you are protesting against. What we are seeing currently, because the protesters already presented their petitions, as we have said, Abdi Karir, a number of those demands have already been met by the president and of course the government. And we are seeing even that going down to the counties, because the counties are also not being left out of this. And even in all the other government agencies, whether it is KEMSA, whether it is, National Cereals and Produce Board, whatever we are seeing happening with the national government is going to get to those levels. But we need to begin to think through how we salvage, especially for the business communities, the opportunities that we have insofar as creating income for the country is concerned. If people want to demonstrate and to protest, I am hoping that the acting Inspector General of Police will learn a few things from this process. Abdi, I have led protests in the past. And when I am aggrieved and people don't listen to me, I will still lead protests. But the experience that I have seen is a very amiable opportunity to engage with the police, where they even tell you, you give us a notice, and we will even assign police officers to escort you. And the reason why that is happening is because even for the CBD, you have different command divisions. Yes. There is, when you get to EACC, that is where Central Police ends. And so Kilimani Police starts from there. When you move towards Mombasa Road, there is another jurisdiction. You move towards Westlands, there is another jurisdiction. This is information that you get to know when you engage with the OCS and the OCPD. And in that engagement, they tell you the do's and the don'ts. Like in this particular case, the Gen Zs actually even had a dress code and they would share it out, except for the infiltrators. We would want to see the acting Inspector General dealing firmly with those who infiltrate peaceful demonstrations and the agencies like IPOA in terms of now informing how we move forward, dealing very viciously also with police officers who are suspected to have used live bullets to kill innocent and peaceful protesters. That, in my view, is a proper way for us to be able to move forward, healing the souls of those who are hurting, healing the wounds of those who are in hospitals, and government also needs to come up and say, for the businesses that were destroyed, we take note of this. I have not seen Nairobi County, for example, holding a meeting with people who lost their businesses. It is a positive gesture, even if you want to do nothing about it, but at least show concern, show some empathy, and national government begin to talk to Kenyans about even the opportunity to take some of the costs of the hospital bills and even the bills of the funerals or of the burials of those who lost their lives.
And given the limelight Kenya has been under in the past few weeks following the demonstrations, is this likely going to also affect the foreign direct investments over fears of stability?
Precisely. And if you look at the economic projections, including the latest projections from Treasury, FDIs, the foreign direct investments, and diaspora remittances really contribute heavily or hugely towards the resources that come to the country. Now, the beauty of this again is that even for the other countries, they are looking at this from a very positive perspective, and we have seen Kenyans in diaspora also demonstrating in solidarity with the locals here. And now this is supposed to really help us to profile the country positively as a democratic state, as a country where citizens actually exercise the right to information, right to assemble, basically implementing the constitution. Now, moving forward is for the government to work towards rebuilding that confidence, because if you listen to a number of the questions relate to corruption and the misuse of public resources, a lot of it which is coming from diaspora. If you also listen to the narratives or the conversations on corruption, we have programs and projects that have been done using public debt, and that part of the taxes that we are having as a country are actually going into payment of these debts. Now, the debt contribution, the resources that are being contributed really boil back to the friends of Kenya who are also in diaspora. So the government needs to come up with a very strong debt management strategy, which of course is there, but I don't know why we do not implement it to the extent that we have to put in place an unconstitutional and illegal task force to be able to advise government on how to navigate around this. But we are hoping that government will begin to learn from these mistakes and really come up with mechanisms to communicate around our debt, and also even communication around the strategies that have been put to be able to address to these debt margins, and largely in terms of boosting the diaspora confidence that the monies that you remit to the Republic of Kenya is really going out to deal with certain service areas that are very critical, both to the government and to the people. Failure to which, of course, indeed, we will see the reduction of the remittances and also the foreign debt investments.
And given that Thursday is also another day, presumably in the week, where demonstrations will be countrywide as per the announcements given by the Gen Zs, this requires some sort of sobriety, isn't it?
It does.
To address
it.
And with the national dialogue now that the head of state called for not happening, what then ought to be forthcoming from the head of state in terms of communicating to the country?
The intelligence knows the people who are behind the leaderless Gen Z organizing and demonstrations. And if you ask certain people, even the genesis of these demonstrations is known, and government knows them. I mean, government knows the genesis of these demonstrations. So how we respond to these issues, including the call that Ruto must go, the president needs to be, as much as we are talking about listening a lot, but he also needs to speak strategically. And in speaking strategically is to speak while in response to the demands, but strategically in terms of addressing the what you call the end goal, which is Ruto must go, because that is really, quote unquote, quite hard and also harsh. But to cost us 2 days in a week is really a big dent to the economy. It is a big dent to a number of issues. I imagine people who traveled in the morning to go to Kenyatta National Hospital because they had appointments with doctors. And because they came in the morning before the demonstrations began, the doctor is locked somewhere and is unable to travel. I imagine those who are expected to go for biometrics at, Nyayo House on their passports and all that. And they have, and everybody who has something to do. So the government needs to come up with a modality of bringing this to a closure. And it is because when the notice is issued, the intelligence of this country, to the extent that they knew that Ford Foundation is sponsoring,
yes,
go to Ford on Upper Hill, Raimtula Towers, and speak to the regional director or to the program officers and ask them, show us who you are working with to finance. Then go back and say, now let's engage with these people who are being funded.
Thank you.
Because whatever information that government has, it is supposed to help us to address this issue faster and quicker. And if it is upon the president that he wants to resign,
yes,
please make it public and leave so that Kenyans can begin to think through how we pick up the pieces.
Thank you, Kevin Osido, for your time here from the County Governance Watch. You're watching the live pictures from Karatina in Nyeri County, where police are patrolling the streets where they have been engaging protesters this afternoon in the county of Nyeri, and our team had the live proceedings from the county where this was all unfolding in Karatina, the county of Nyeri, as well as the events that had happened in Nairobi's majorly Nairobi Central Business District, where the protests were concentrated and not the outlying areas of the county. And our reporter Emmanuel Toh has been keeping an eye on that bit. From Kisumu County, Laura Otieno and her camera person were also on that bit, and also Crispin Otieno from the county of who has since morning been scanning the area. Francis Mtalaki from the county of Mombasa, Marian Nyambura and her camera person as well have been in the county of Nakuru to give us an assessment of the events as they transpired. They follow yesterday's statement by President William Ruto, who said that the Ford Foundation is funding the protests in the country, and that, according to him, quote, our youth are not available for retrogressive assignments. Those sponsoring them to cause violence and mayhem must be ashamed of themselves. Thank you for watching this special coverage here on the broadcast on a day that the Gen Zs have billed as a Tuesday protest day here across the country, demanding for more governance measures from the government, despite the major concessions made by the government, including the withdrawal of the Finance Bill 2024 and last week's disbanding of his entire cabinet by the president. They are calling for an end to corruption, injustice and inequality, and we will be having more regarding what has been happening across the country in our following news sessions at 7 and at 9 p.m. I am Ayub Abdikadir. Thank you for watching and good afternoon.
Lemon lotion, enriched with vitamin C and sunflower seed oil for 48-hour nourishing glow and brighter skin. Try Nice and Lovely Lemon Lotion today.
imperfections, blackheads. Try Garnier's Pure Active 3-in-1 Charcoal, powered by salicylic acid and purified charcoal to reduce pimple-causing germs by 99.5%. One product, 3 uses for a pure skin. Garnier Pure Active 3-in-1 Charcoal, #1 in South Africa. By Garnier, naturally.
Whenever you fly to space or take your first step as baby, SoftCare always stays with you. New SoftCare Space Series is rooted from space technology. Keeps you dry and comfortable for 12 hours long. Offers you the most effective protection during your space journey. SoftCare. Protect your leap.
Experience the power of the ultimate glow in our new revitalizing formula. With 3 times more oil-infused serum, Vaseline Lotions penetrates and restores your skin's natural moisture from within. No need to add extra oils or glycerin. New Vaseline Lotions.
The new KCB mobile loan is unbelievably flexible and incredibly affordable. You can now borrow up to 1 million Kenya shillings from as low as 1.2% as a 1-day, 7-day, 14-day, 30-day loan, or enjoy a longer-term period of up to 1 year at competitive rates. Dial *522# or apply on the KCB app today. The KCB mobile loan, unbelievably flexible, incredibly affordable. KCB, for people, for better. Terms and conditions apply. Regulated by the Central Bank of Kenya.
Safari ya mbali huanza kwa hatua moja. Tumetembea masafa marefu, milima kwa mabonde. Ajili kubwa ni kuwatafuta na kuwatembelea wakulima wa zao la makadamia. Tumesikiliza hadithi zao na hata kusoma kutoka kwao katika ulingo wa ukulima.
You must know that you provide quality which can also encourage whoever is buying to look for you tomorrow.
Ile moshi imeanza kupanda, kawaida wadudu wengine wataanza kutoroka na kuna vile wengine watakufa wakianguka chini.
Wataalamu wenye tajriba ya aina yake nao wametembelea studio zetu na kutumiminia maarifa.
I've traveled to Turkey, I've gone to Ukraine. 3 Ukrainian farmers can feed Kenya.
Hayo yote ni kuhakikisha kuwa wewe unayepania kuwa mkulima tajika, unayepata mafunzo hayo kwa kina. Usikose kujiunga nasi kila siku ya Jumanne ili tujifunze mengi kuhusu ukulima wa makadamia.
Ngozi yako ina glow. Nilijipaka mafuta leo asubuhi nikikam, lakini skin yangu ishaparara and it looks so dull.
Sis, see, it's the new Nice and Lovely Lemon Extract Body Lotion.
Hiyo ndio secret yangu to a moisturized and bright skin. Usimix.
New Nice and Lovely Lemon Lotion, enriched with vitamin C and sunflower seed oil for 48-hour nourishing glow and brighter skin. Try Nice and Lovely Lemon Lotion today.
Thank you so much.
then they say a stray bullet, and then they don't even know. We have seen a situation where these things, actually, I don't know what to say, but I hope someone can be able to listen and someone can be able to sympathize and even walk in the shoes of the Kenyans. Nobody is funding these people. I don't know if the president have evidence based on his allegations, but Kenyans are tired. And the only thing they're asking, can you listen and do the right thing? Is that difficult, or is that a crime to ask? Is it a crime to ask that, to say that I'm hungry, I cannot be able to feed myself, I want food? Is it a crime to say that I'm jobless, I'm educated, I went to school, my mother struggled, and now I cannot be able to feed himself, we cannot be able to feed family, I cannot be able to pay rent? Is that a crime that can guarantee or result to me being shot dead? Speaking about democracy, just to say that I want water, we want water in our taps, now you get shot because of that. Just saying that we want to live in a very clean environment, is that a crime? Just saying that I don't want to be harassed, I don't want to be killed. Let everybody follow the Constitution. Nobody, even the president. It is very unfortunate that Moi is still alive. Moi is still alive because we are going to back days where you could not be able to criticize or challenge the government of the day. Moi is still alive, and we have to put Moi to rest.
Okay. As we draw to a close, I think there's a lot that to remind our viewers that we are still monitoring events across the different counties, where we have some counties which have had some grave incidents happening. Others have been silent and have been peaceful and calm, which is a good thing in regards to the safety of people, people and property as well. Aside from that, we are still monitoring to see what else the authorities are going to say, because like I had read earlier, there's a statement that has been shared by the Ministry of Interior and National Administration in regards to an action by the police, as well as action by the protesters. Some of them, the protesters, many of them have been, saying that they are peaceful, and there have been many allegations that the police are acting with force that is not commensurate to what is required of them in that situation. Aside from that, the government has said that criminals who are camouflaging as peace-loving will be dealt with firmly in strict adherence to the law, and the national police will continue to pursue all those culpable, whether the crimes were committed today or in the past. And something that came up again, which is important to note, is that the government says that to improve public communication and in line with the Public Order Act, police will be issuing advisories on areas of deployment, protest zones, areas cordoned off, and contact persons to be reached following notification by organizers to enhance and ensure the peaceful conduct of public gatherings. And, and aside from that, we have also seen a statement by the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, which has also given an update, which was as at earlier this afternoon, on the protests as well as on the Kware killings. For the benefit of those who may have joined us later in this broadcast or may not have that update, the commission says that a total of 50 people have died in relation to the protests, and this abductions and arrest, and demands immediate